We're from the Kingsman tailor shop in London. Maybe you've heard of us?
Today marks the beginning of a new age. Wait, I'm gonna show you. Say goodbye to the Kingsman.
Kind of got a bit of a save the world situation here.
Welcome to Statesmen.
As your American cousins, we'll be working side by side.
Let's get started.
This is the Film Board from The Next Reel, and we spoil movies. I'm Pete Wright, and this month we're dressing fancy and boozing just a bit with our friends in the Kingsman and the Statesmen. In Kingsman, the Golden Circle, thugs in residence for tonight's roundtable come with their very own special mixed drink code names. Andy Nelson, a.k.a. Iron Butterfly.
Not just a mixed drink, it's also the new tattoo I got today. Made out of iron.
Oh
no.
Steve Sarmento, a.k.a. Flaming Blue Jesus. Yeah. And let me just say, before you have something smart-ass to say, I see in the notes that you said you didn't like that code name, but
No.
Steve, you never get to choose your own code name. You never choose your own code name.
All right. Two more shots in on this one. So Tommy made me laugh twice. I told him I'm shots of bourbon trace each time he makes me laugh. So we'll see where this thing goes tonight.
There's Tommy Handsome, a.k.a. Kick Me in the Jimmy.
Oi, bruvs! It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
You can find out more about this show and its sibling shows at thenextreel.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at thenextreel, and we greatly appreciate your direct support on Patreon at patreon.com/thenextreel. Subscribers get access to our members-only Slack group, special shows like the weekly Saturday matinee, and other fun perks just for subscribing. Thank you very much. Okay, gentlemen, Kingsman, the Golden Circle. This is the first movie was fantastic, right? We talked about it on this show. Great origin story, great training, nice heart. Does Kingsman 2 live up to that experience? Andy, start us off.
I was actually pretty disappointed with this one. I had a lot of fun with the first one, and this one I felt like there wasn't enough of a change. There wasn't anything really different that stood out to me, and I just felt like it was more of the same. And in the end, I just kind of felt like it was a little boring, and forgettable. So I didn't want to leave thinking that, but I did. So that's my initial thoughts.
Oh my gosh. No, Andy, this is what a sequel should do. This is a franchise that it's found its footing. I'm looking forward to the next story because it continues the story and adds something new. It raises the stakes for the hero, and it gave us everything the original did, but kept it fresh and made it new.
It's the bourbon talking.
I'm surprised to hear that.
Wait, surprised to hear what? That I enjoyed the movie?
Yes.
What? Am I alone on this?
I don't know. Tommy, what do you think?
Actually, you're both wrong. Just kidding. That's impossible for you both to be wrong. This movie, like the first one, even more than the first one, it was constantly on the line for me, where I was like, oh, here's where it's too much. Oh, here's where I'm going to fall out of love with it. Here's where I'm going to start getting bored. Here's where and it never happened. I had a great time with this movie. I was really surprised how much I enjoyed it, because I would think that maybe Matthew Vaughn potentially would be at risk of sequelitis, trying to outdo himself too much. And I thought that while this film was as crazy as the first one, or even more so, I had a great time.
That is fascinating to me. I present it to you. Well, I'm not going to present them all, but I have in my head an opus delivered in 5 points. 1, the effects. 2, Bring Out Your Dead, a treatise on the rebirth of Harry. 3, Elton John. 4, Julianne Moore versus Lispy McJackson. And 5, Placing the Tracker. Oof. Dear God, Placing the Tracker. And so I know we're going to get into all of these 5 points, but these are the 5 things I was left thinking about when I left this movie, and none of them are great. And in fact, I feel like this film has managed to excise the fun and exuberance of the first film, ratchet up the craziness on the fantasy fun gear scale all the way to Inspector Gadget, and somehow make the look of it mash up Kingsman 1 with Spy Kids. I don't don't know how they managed to do that, but it ended up feeling absolutely empty. The pieces that were best in this film were the quiet moments, the moments where we actually get to see, the way these characters work, these hints of the heart of the first movie when Edgerton and Mark Strong and Colin Firth are on screen together, and the rest of it just felt hollow. Like Andy, I was driving out of the parking lot really struggling to remember what I had just seen. I was sadly disappointed in this movie.
Two against two. Let's do this.
What? Pete, this morning, you and I were of the same mind. We were like in sync on our list, and I don't know what happened to you today.
Steve, I don't know. You could write it off to sunstroke. Right now, I'm just mad.
Wow.
Let's talk about the script. Jane Goldman and Matthew Vaughn, based on the comic book The Secret Service by Mark Millar and Dave Gibbons.
Have any of you actually read any of the comics? Do you guys know this story? Like, was this taken from one of the comic stories, or is this just something that these two came up with based on the characters from the comics?
As I recall from our discussion of the first film, that it was sort of like just a one-off like graphic novel or something like that. So I think this is just the characters. I don't believe there's anything in the story that's pulled from any other source material. I think this is all original, but just building on the characters from that. Because as I recall from our discussion of the first one, it was not like a long-running series. I think it was just like a couple
it looks like
issue.
Got 3 volumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like 18 total individual issues, 3 collections of 6. I think that's how it, right? I think that's how it came out. So what do you think of Goldman and Vaughn? Actually, Steve, I think you should probably start.
Well, so when I look at what Jane Goldman has written, I go back and I look and I see Stardust and Kick-Ass, The Debt, X-Men First Class, Woman in Black, X-Men Days of Future Past, and then these Kingsman's movies, and then Miss Peregrine. So I did not care for Kick-Ass. I haven't seen Miss Peregrine, but I think everything else I really, really enjoyed. So this is a writer who I think has a strong handle on story and works really well with Matthew Vaughn on this. So as far as story, like I said, this did everything that I wanted to do. It gives us Eggsy is full on Kingsman. We have another entertainingly eccentric villain that's leveraging sort of a current social issue for their benefit. We've got the tie-ins to, raising the stakes. And I think there was just so many pieces that it built on the prior story that it wove those pieces in really well, that this didn't feel like a tacked on sequel. They really went back to the original to say, okay, what are story pieces there that we can build on? When it comes back to, revisiting events to sort of see what happened from a different point of view, we've got crucial information that Eggsy's going to use. He's, from his memories, we go back to things he learned in the first film. So all those things just, to me, worked really well for a sequel where it's just a continuation of the story and including those continuing elements from the first film. And that's what I want, because I think there's the challenge of, do you retcon stuff and like have to rewrite around things because the way the first story was written? And I think the problems that they solved by going back to the first story, to me, it seemed very smart writing.
Huh.
Now,
what?
No, I mean, because you think, okay, because in the previews, you're like, okay, how are they bringing Harry back? And I thought the way that they tied that in, given where, we last see him in the first film outside the church. And where is that? That's in America. So again, the Statesman could be right there. That ties in really well. How do we get him to retrieve his memories? We go back to Mr. Pickle and all of those. And I thought this is really well done to connect the threads together.
Yeah, no, I think the rekindling of his memories, once you buy the fact that Harry could be rebirthed thanks to some magic eye toothpaste, I think
Alpha Gel.
I think you're
Alpha
on.
Gel.
You call it what you want. Once you buy into that, I think the rest of it is good. And I think that sequence, in fact, was really nice. And I actually enjoyed the butterflies. I like the effects of the butterflies. I like the way they did that to Harry. And I think Colin Firth in general was good in this movie when he was in his moments with Eggsy and Mark Strong. I think they were great.
And I do think it was important that the way that they did it, just to interrupt for 1 second, because if they had just brought him back as an immediate, he's alive and is a superhero, perfect spy again, then it would have felt like retreading. But this, we got to see sort of a different version of Galahad and see him sort of get his mojo back, I thought was really exciting.
The problem with it is this, though, Tommy, is that they retconned Kingsman 1 in a way that has really damaged it for me. Because in Kingsman 1, I was hurt by the fact that Harry was killed. That was an important milestone in the damned ecosystem. And they bring him back with the toothpaste on his eye in this movie for a completely ridiculous purpose. I don't need him. They could have told this story without him, let him die, prove that this is a universe in which the filmmakers and the writers are willing to take risks that will hurt your heart and not feel like they're going to magically wave a magic wand. And here he is again, that we can just enjoy the movie again. That was a betrayal, and I hated it.
Well, and also it diminishes the death of Merlin, because now I don't believe that Merlin's dead. And
exactly.
Because they have foot toothpaste.
Right. It becomes a problem when all of a sudden it's like, well, we can bring anybody back. And so it just turns into one of those games. And I just find that it's frustrating. And, you know, we've dealt with this in our current Star Trek series with the bringing Spock back to life and everything. It's just one of those things. They know that there are these popular characters, in the side of the business side of filmmaking is like, well, let's bring it back because the audience love that character. And so they write it in. And I just think that there are times where it does hurt product. And yes, I enjoyed seeing Colin Firth on screen. I think he's a great character in this franchise, but it really frustrated me. And even if it was something that I could buy into, it still frustrates me that they went to the lengths to make it happen.
I think those are really good points. And those make a lot of sense. Maybe why it didn't bother me as much as maybe it either should have or would have is because I felt like it really did help complete Eggsy's transformation. He never got to have that part in the first film, because when Colin Firth was taken out so unceremoniously after the amazing church massacre, that for Eggsy to be able to now go back and save him is kind of like it helps really complete Eggsy's story. So I think that thematically it had enough to say. Yes, it was an interesting gimmick to have him need saving and stuff like that. But I mean, Eggsy really became his hero and really became his savior in that moment.
I don't you think he could have saved somebody else?
Yeah, and he was about to leave to be happy. He would have been happy as a...
Like, they kill off the people. They kill off the people I most wanted to see sequels to. Like, here they introduce Roxy really anemically, who became a Kingsman in the last movie, and here she's blown up by the. I thought we were.
That was really disappointing.
That was hugely disappointing.
Cyranek de Burgos, and then she's gone.
And then she's just gone. That was really disappointing. And I thought, well, okay, here they are. They've put together this list of people who. Had a few hours downtime on some other projects and came in to shoot little pieces and then go about their business.
No.
That's very much what this movie.
No. Because it's solving what I call the Back to the Future 2 problem, where you've got like Jennifer. It's like, well, she's not necessary to her story. Let's knock her unconscious for the bulk of the movie. The Kingsmen are there, and so to give the stakes and have Eggsy, on his own, you've got to take everybody out. You can't just incapacitate the Kingsmen. I felt that would have been an easy out. And I think totally taking out the Kingsmen, except for Eggsy and Merlin at that point, to me was a great challenge to Eggsy of how is he going to do this? Now he's on his own. It's that whole, in the second film, take him into the darkness of he's on his own. He doesn't have the things that he's relied on, and he's got to figure it out himself to a certain extent.
The problem is, and then I'll let this go, this Roxy point, the thing I was looking forward to most once I saw her back in the role of the Kingsman is, maybe they're setting up a strong woman agent for him to play off of during the course of this movie. And they killed her so fast, and there is no substitute in this film for a strong female character.
They pretend to have one with Halle Berry.
You can kind of pretend it's Halle Berry. You can you'd be absolutely befuddled to think it's Tilda. There is no alternative to a strong agent in a central role in this movie, and that was really disappointing.
It's a very good point. And as far as the script was concerned, that the inciting incident of Julianne Moore, Poppy, destroying all the Kingsmen is never really explained at all.
Yeah.
Almost to a point that I think we're just supposed to sort of forget about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, they clearly had to get us to the States. And that was the way to do it. And the other things that Steve definitely said, but it's not very well handled because it doesn't make sense for her to go after them and not necessarily the Statesmen. I know that there are some ways to talk about it. I know that Steve mentioned off air some ideas that they weren't maybe able to hack them as much as they were with robotic arm Magoo, but that's us doing a lot of work for that. I kept waiting.
Yeah,
I felt like there were ways if whiskey was always going to be a part of it from the beginning, like that would have made sense, but they just really moved on. That was something that I definitely had trouble with in the script. The inciting incident needs to make sense, not just be so loud.
You know, one of the things, Tom, I was thinking about that and thinking about the point that you bring up from earlier, that I was listening to an interview with Taron Egerton talking about how Matthew Vaughn makes movies, his observation of Matthew Vaughn making movies. And one of the things he said was that Matthew Vaughn overshoots a lot, because he really believes that the craft of making the movie happens in editing, and he wants to have a lot of different takes on scenes, different takes on effects mats and setups and all that. I mean, he wants to have a lot of footage to muddle through and craft the movie, you know, after it's shot, which is fine. That is definitely a technique, and we've talked about people who make movies that way. This movie felt very much like it suffered as a result of that strategy, that maybe stuff that's still sitting in the cutting room didn't make it on the film that might have explained some of these holes.
Because the film is already too long.
Yeah, well, it's too long.
It didn't deaden me as much as I thought it would because I saw it at the ArcLight in Sherman Oaks. That's important to know. And
you must be a really important person.
Yeah. And they always have someone go down and give a little speech beforehand telling you what movie you're seeing and who's in it. I don't know why they do that. But then they said with a running time of, you know, whatever it is, 2.5 hours, and audibly the entire audience was like, oh, like, we did not plan our afternoons for this. No one bothered to look it up. So maybe, I mean, it's interesting to see what might be on the cutting room floor as far as that's concerned.
It was a strange part of the plot, because it seemed like Charlie, who was the one who kind of comes back to this one as the Kingsman or the not quite Kingsman. He was booted right at the last minute in the last film because he chickened out when the train was going to run him over. And then they have that little, the fisticuffs at the end. It almost is set up like Charlie and Poppy are working together, and he's helping her, and so she's helping him like blow these guys up to get revenge or something. Like it seems like a personal revenge thing. Like, and that's the only logical thing, because in the story context, it's like, why is she going after the Kingsman, and why isn't she going after other elements of people policing the world? It was kind of a strange thing to all of a sudden have this part of the story, except to serve the plot of getting Eggsy to be working alone and to meet the Statesmen. And in that context, it just is an incredibly weak setup.
It really is. It's a giant hole, and it introduces us to a villain that is ultimately kind of pointless, and Julianne Moore. Okay. 0.4 in my opus of 5 points. Julianne Moore was not a strong villain. I found her unwatchable in this movie.
Oh my gosh.
I liked her. I had a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh. So much fun.
Terrible.
No.
I really liked it too.
I loved it. Because it's like you took what Samuel Jackson was doing and they just cranked it up to 11. To just make it.
But see, I didn't like that either. Lispy Mick Jackson, that was way over the top.
Oh my gosh. No, I loved everything about her. I love her little intro about, the different, sort of like legal, drugs that are out there. And we've even got, comment on sugar and the addictiveness of sugar and how unhealthy that is. And then the tobacco industry. And it gave me a complete justification for what her motives were, what her rationale was of, I'm a successful businessman. I just happen to be in an industry that has not yet been accepted by the world, but there are other industries that are far more harmful than mine that are accepted by the mainstream, and they can flourish and, be accepted. She's making all this money, but has to work on the outskirts and, be on her remote island. And to me, that fit it. And I loved so much about Poppy Land. Her two little robotic dogs, Benny and Jet, with the whole Elton John thing was just, I thought, hilarious. I loved it.
It would have been funnier. It would have been funnier if it was Benny and two smaller jets.
But just
come on,
the
world low hanging fruit.
Oh yeah, but the world she created was so much fun. There, her little fantasy, and she's just that villain that's just so crazy. I can't probably eat a hamburger for another couple days because of that scene. She's so
the only
sinister.
thing I could think of during that scene is thank God he didn't pull a ring out of his mouth. Like that was that was the only thing that would have made this scene even stupider.
Apart from the writing of the character, I liked her performance because I've never seen a big bad do nothing but smile.
Yeah.
The entire movie. She doesn't give a big scary speech. She doesn't scream at someone, get them. I mean, the entire time she seems like the most pleasant person in the world. It's a take. And I'm ready to see a new take on a supervillain.
Yeah, I actually did like her. I'm in that camp on this one. I did find some issues with little bits and pieces of it, but for the most part, I just kind of enjoyed that element of the story. I thought she was a pretty interesting villain to have, and her, I guess both the villains in both of these seem to be kind of the message villains as opposed to I'm going to just take over the world sorts of villains. Right. Which is kind of an interesting way to take it in this particular story. I will say though, like the end of Poppy, that final climax, if you can call it a climactic battle with the villain, weird. It ended up really weak. And I was like, gosh, I wish there was more to Poppy than that. And then they end up just fighting Whiskey, and that just, for me, the whole Whiskey storyline really, for me, was one of the weakest links in kind of the different stories, because I really wanted to see a better final confrontation with Poppy, I guess.
Okay, and I want to go back to, because I don't disagree with you about who Poppy is, like in Poppyland. I agree with that. I did not like her. I think it's a miscast. If you're going to go for somebody who is playing that kind of a role, I couldn't help but think about Gemma Mays, who she's going to be in American Made coming up, and she actually plays that role of smiling sinister, I think, much better of that, and that would have been a much more interesting casting for me, and so I just had a real problem with actually watching Julianne Moore. I just thought it was a bad fit. I'll stand down. Clearly, I'm
you're outnumbered.
I'm outnumbered on this one. I'm not going to die on that one. Let's talk a little bit about the direction of good Matthew Vaughn. Did we notice anything? I mean, did you notice anything coming off of Kingsman 1 that felt like it was of note directorially, Tommy?
The whole thing is very much a director's movie. I mean, it really still has that same kind of feel. It felt a little bit more at times confident than part of the bar fight in this one that takes place in Kentucky. Felt a little bit more grounded slightly than the one that was in the first Kingsman. That being said, a lot of the effects in this movie are kind of dodgy, which took me out of it sometimes. But I mean, I don't know. I find it kind of thrilling for someone just to be like, let's throw everything at the wall. And yet I'm not sure if I would give it the credit to the director or not. I guess I do, because I think it's such a director's medium. But what I sort of said at the outset was that every time that I felt like, okay, you finally either crossed a line, or Elton John, now you finally beat that into the ground. This is no longer funny. I'm out of it. Then he does that flying kick and winks at the audience. And I'm like, Matthew Vaughn, I'm back in. I kept being like, okay, this is it. Like, now I'm bored, or now I'm done with this. And then he would just do this little turn that would bring me right back in. And all of a sudden I'm laughing when I didn't even know, when I, wasn't ready for it. I think for a film this long, and for this also weirdly patient, it really has a lot of downtimes. Like you said, Pete, the quiet times. It really seems to love its characters and think that its characters are very important and are worth investing in, and their emotions are important. And I appreciate that. That's maybe what kept me from feeling like I was being punched in the face.
I felt like this was going to be a very different movie from the very opening sequence when he's having his conversation with Tilda and they're talking about missing Harry and he turns back and looks at the dog. I think Taron Egerton is the best bit of Taron Egerton in the film when he's choking back the tears, saying he has to go to work. I thought, this is the movie I came to see. Thank God. This is what I want to see. They remembered the heart and then they forgot about it right after that. Andy, what'd you think of the direction?
Yeah, I think Matthew Vaughn has kind of established a feel for his films. They definitely kind of feel the same way, where the way that he handles his action and his characters and everything. I kind of enjoy his direction. I'm not totally in love with it, but I don't know. I always find kind of a weird pacing with his films that I can struggle with a little bit. Sometimes more than others, and sometimes the way he handles some of the violence and everything. Sometimes I'm not quite on board with it. Kick-Ass, I just had such a hard time with that movie. I know a lot of people love it, but it just really irritated me the whole time. But for the most part, I think he handled everything in this one pretty well. I think some of the action sequences in the first Kingsman were handled better than this one, but for the most part, I thought it was fine.
And Steve, I want to get your opinion on this, but specifically to the action and the violence, I was in a weird position in this movie. I after when they charged the Poppyland, which was really the equivalent to the church scene, right? I mean, it's the big blowout where there's, few against many or one against many, and we're just gunning down everybody in crazy ways. I wanted that in this movie. I didn't get it. I felt it felt sort of, I wanted more violence. I wanted more creative violence. I wanted more cleverness in it. It felt just kind of predictable, and strangely, it's weird that I'm pulling for more violence in film, but I really felt like I needed it. This movie was sort of pulled its punches a little bit.
Well, and I think it felt that way, at least for me, because, and that was part of my problem with this, is because so often it felt like they were just rehashing the same stuff they did in the last film. Like you said, when they're attacking Poppyland, it felt kind of like I was watching the church again. We had the car chase where in the first one, it was them driving backwards down the road while the cop was chasing them. In this one, it was longer and bigger and everything. And so we got bigger, but I didn't feel like it was doing enough that made it stand out as something that was different. Again,
also always on the line. Yeah. Of like, I think I really went into it maybe waiting to see it fail. I don't know why, what a horrible thing to do with my life. But it just, whenever it was like, it's just, it just kept pulling me back. There were always enough clever things in every single sequence, either it be camera work, whether it be the music involved, whether it be the editing, all of that, which, really kept me involved. And I thought it was still new enough that it was like a getting back into a world that I had loved so much.
Drop that mic, Tommy. I agree with you 100% on that one. This, I agree that I went in and about halfway through, I'm like, okay, what are they going to have a scene that rivals the church scene? So I was sort of waiting for that moment. I loved the car chase at the beginning. And I think, the challenge of a movie like this, and I think, I sort of compare it to John Wick, where the first one came out of nowhere, just really surprised everybody. And there's a lot of pressure to deliver something that's similar, but raise the stakes, make it bigger, make it better. And how do you do that while still staying true to what was successful in the first one? And I think, unfortunately, it puts them often in a no-win situation, because if they go stray too far to try to do something new, you're going to disappoint. And if you stay too close to it and ramp it up, then it's like, well, you're rehashing it. You haven't done anything new for me. And I think it unfortunately puts them in a no-win situation. So I look at this as far as, was I entertained? Did I have a good time with it? Yes. The scene when they're in the bar and Harry walks over to the door and starts bolting it up, manners make man. I just cheered. I was like, yes, thrilled to see them come back to see Harry in action. And what they did with that, I thought was brilliant, because he's not back 100%. He thinks he is. He thinks he's just like he was before, but no, there's issues. And I think that played out really well. And I enjoyed that because it was a new iteration of what I had seen in the first one. It did something new. Gave us a look at whiskey and sort of the tools that the Statesmen have in play. And I thought things like that worked really well. I think Matthew Vaughn, really enjoys his sort of close quarters combat and being able to move his camera all over the place. We see that in the car chase, and then even in the final sort of fight in the diner of just where he's going to move that camera just all over the place to show us all different kinds of angles, different speeds on the fighting. It's something that, we've seen in his other films. And it's something that I saw here, and I thought that's what I expect from him, and he delivered. And
filmmaking wise, I don't think it is the initial attack on Poppyland. The church scene is the final blowout in the diner against Whiskey, because he does the same. It's obviously faked, but one long camera shot.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That just goes everywhere. Poppyland is more, is a lot more cut up and a little more standard. So.
Now, the one issue I have with that, and it's just me as a fan of movies and having seen a lot, I thought I could see a lot of Robert Rodriguez, Desperado of, we've got the briefcase with the rockets in it and the guns in that. I'd seen that before. Yep. And I thought, okay, but that movie's over 20 years old and there's a whole generation that probably has not seen that. So I can't let I try not to let my own expertise, and experience and history as a film viewer taint that to say, oh, you're just copying that. But does it work well? Yes. And when that briefcase unfolds down into like a huge bulletproof, human-sized barrier, shield, yeah, that was really cool. There was a lot of fun things that were going on with that. I thought they kept it fresh. And yes, he's drawing on things that have been done before, but what film hasn't? And so I can't hold that against him because I think he found a way to make it work within this story.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not at all claiming that you can't pull from inspiration from that you bring up. Desperado is great, especially because I brought up Spy Kids, like potato. But in this case, the truth is, I feel like this movie comes up short from what I believe he is capable of, and that's what I was comparing it to. Like I wanted more of this. You bring up John Wick. It's a great example. I am a huge fan of John Wick 2. I feel like I can't watch John Wick 1 without watching John Wick 2. So I just have to devote 2.5 hours or 4.5 hours to the whole thing because it's that kind of experience for me. I wanted that. I wanted more Matthew Vaughn, not less. And I feel like it was half as clever as I think it could have been. Here I am shooting for more clever decapitations and crazy grenades in the
so
pants.
What you didn't get that with the lasso, with his little electrified lasso,
that lasso was okay. That was crazy
right,
cool.
They brought that.
I wanted that lasso.
He did. We had a whole scene where Whiskey's out there taking, he's slicing guys in half with that thing, and what, that was not enough? Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
No, I told you there were things in here that did work. Yeah. I'm talking about
the whiskey's kicking in.
It's bourbon.
That's right.
It's bourbon. Yeah. Good old Kentucky bourbon, Tommy.
I just feel like this movie missed the bar for me. Let's talk about let's go through the cast, but I'd like to batch them. Can we batch them?
Yes.
And talk about highlights from each group, starting with our friends, the Kingsmen, Taron Egerton, Mark Strong, Colin Firth, Michael Gambon as Dumbledore, and Sophie Cookson as the short-lived Roxy. Highlights from the experience of the Kingsmen. Andy, you've been quiet for too long.
I love Taron Egerton. I think he's a fascinating actor to watch, and I think he was introduced to me with the first Kingsman, and I've just enjoyed seeing him on screen. And I think that he brings a lot to film, and I like him in this role. I think he works really well as this character. I have a lot of fun with him, and I actually really enjoy what they did to develop his story with his girlfriend, Princess Tilda. That kind of continued, and I was really happy to see that, and just the other relationships, like him and Merlin, like their relationship. I enjoy so much in both of these films. I think that it's a strength that they have found in the telling of these stories. Is some of these relationships work just so nicely.
I really like to. I'm glad that you brought up Hannah Ahlstrom as Princess Tilda. How are we pronouncing that?
Tilda.
Yeah.
Tilda.
Yeah.
I like that they didn't just sort of, she seemed like a character that would just not appear in this movie.
Yeah.
I would never
Yeah.
have guessed that, you know, like the girl that James Bond ends up with is never in the next one. She's just disappeared. The fact that they actually made it a committed relationship based on a certain kind of intercourse. I don't know how I can say that, which is what we were left with, which is a big part of the first movie where I remember a lot of people were like, oh, no. Weird, too far, too weird.
Yeah.
Why would you end the movie like that? But to just sort of double down on that and have them be in love and everything. I thought that was a lot of fun.
And even you
I
have
like
that reference where she's like, well, you know what happens when you save the world.
When you save the world, yeah. I wish I could have, I would have enjoyed an actual ending to the scene of when he does that freak out when he's talking to his friend, Brandon. That he sort of ruins the entire dinner.
Yeah.
And then we don't see anyone until the wedding. But again, film's already 2.5 hours. We got to keep things moving. Yeah. People got work in the morning. I understand. But I did like the idea, especially very much to go back to a point that I believe it was Pete made in a film that was needing more strong, capable female characters. It was needed. At very least, she wasn't strong. She was capable and she was a nice person and everything, but at least they treated that matchup as something important.
Well, yeah, I think when he calls her, I mean, it really speaks to me, you know, volumes of what they're doing with that relationship where he's at the festival and he knows he's got to, you know, get intimate to plant that tracker. And so he calls her and is, you know, really honest and says, look, this is what I have to do. And I'm being upfront with you and I want to be honest with you. And that's something, you know, you typically wouldn't see. And like in a James Bond film, he's just women here and there. And to me, I thought that was a real interesting dynamic to show this, you know, this relationship and how committed he is, although he is, you know, not ready to get married, you know, at that point. But I think it speaks to his character and how much he feels for her and wants to be honest with her, which is not something I expected. And it brought an interesting sort of like dynamic and conflict with him and that storyline.
Let's talk about the Statesmen then. Jeff Bridges as Champagne Champ, Pedro Pascal as Whiskey, Channing Tatum as Tequila, and Halle Berry as Ginger Ale.
My favorite moment in the film was when, after Jeff Bridges spit his tequila, I guess it was, into his spittoon or whatever it was, and then he takes the liquor and rubs it under his nose in just the back of a shot. I thought that was the funniest thing.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges was a highlight of the Statesman just because he's so weird.
Yeah.
Every choice was so weird.
I ended up being kind of disappointed in the Statesman and what they brought to the film. I felt like it was just a flat element. And so we get the Statesman because the Kingsmen are destroyed. And I mean, you know, to the point earlier of, hey, we need to get Eggsy to be working alone. Well, they didn't succeed because now we have the Statesman and it's just more people to be working with. And I just felt like there wasn't enough interest in these characters. They kind of just fall flat. Like Channing Tatum had the potential to be somebody interesting, and then he's kind of incapacitated for the majority of the film. And I don't know. I ended up kind of disappointed in what they brought to us with the Statesman.
Did you get that feeling though, Andy, too? Like this was Tatum had a day open? So he came and did some shooting?
Yeah. I mean, he's hardly in it. And I mean, I guess he gets and Channing Tatum as credit. So it's like,
for the way that they're advertising, it's definitely more of a glorified cameo.
It's a marketing thing. And that's really frustrating. Why was Pedro Pascal in this movie? Channing Tatum should have been Whiskey. Channing Tatum should have been the guy that we are with the whole time. We don't need two statesmen to handle that particular role. It could have been one, and it could have actually brought us closer to that feeling of loss when we ultimately experience the betrayal. I know thought experiments are hard to stomach, but I couldn't help but thinking that we didn't need two of these people.
But Channing Tatum looks great in that hat at the end.
Yes. I would have
He doffs it well.
Right. He doffs it well.
And also, but I mean, the thing about Channing Tatum is it makes it personal for the Statesman.
Yeah.
In the same way that, I mean, one of their own is at risk.
Yes.
Of like this. And so, I mean, it gives them, the Statesman, an automatic reason to want to give all of their resources.
I couldn't help but think, like, why put him on ice? But give him the rash and then make him go solve the problem. Now we have a ticking time bomb. Come on. I doubt they can afford him. This movie already seems like it cost a mint. And to put Channing Tatum as a lead role,
I'm sure that I think it's just economics. You get him, you pay him way too much, I'm sure, for a glorified cameo, but then you keep at least a cap on that.
Curse you, economics.
Thanks,
Curse
money.
you.
So, interesting side note. 2 movies this summer with Channing Tatum feature the song Country Road, Take Me Home. This one and Logan Lucky.
Logan Lucky.
And I thought, does he own the rights to that song? And that's what...
That is weird.
Yeah, that was a
but they were,
strange,
but to me,
connection between these two.
They're both used, I think, really well for how they're fit into the story. But it was just one of those things where I thought, Channing Tatum in this song again, what is going on with him?
It's interesting that has become the song for America.
It is.
Like, cause this is, I always like the idea of like British or other countries showing what either they think or a parody of what America is like.
Yes.
I mean, we make mine things out of baseball equipment. Like the whole thing is so ramped up to be so funny. And like the scene, preceding the fight in the bar, like that's the most hillbilliest hillbilly person stands up and immediately uses the most homophobic, horrible, ridiculously over the top hillbilly language. I fell completely in love with it. It was like, yeah, if you're going to do it, why not go crazy?
What's really funny about that, though, back to Country Road, is that we've had this summer, I think, 4 movies with John Denver in it, right? Because it's not just Logan Lucky and Kingsman, it's Alien Covenant and Free Fire. What is up with John Denver? I haven't heard anything of him for years, and now he's dominated the summer.
It's like his library just got a discount on the market or something.
It's a sale on Getty Music, right?
Right. It took Prince, R.I.P., to die, probably for them to use "Let's Go Crazy."
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's something like that. Like something just literally changed, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you can have this song," and everyone went, "Great,
everybody take this song."
Yeah. As far as the Statesmen were concerned, my Halle Berry I thought she did the best she could. It is a disappointing role. And I was very much, especially with them planting the seed of, hey, with Merlin, you don't want to just do this, right? Yeah. Typing and being, I think, Andy called her the Q, right?
Somebody else did, but yeah.
Somebody else
going
did.
from Bond girl to Q is sort of like a downgrade.
From Bond girl to Q. She really needed that scene, and we know she can. We've seen her in action movies. Yeah. She's very capable at that.
She was great in Catwoman.
To not have her, to not give her the chance to do that, and then for the Statesmen to be like, you're in. Totally unproven in the field person. It felt pandering and felt disappointing. Again, 2.5 hours.
But it did to me, it sort of set, that conversation with Merlin did set up sort of his moment. You know, when they suit up on the plane, you know, it's his opportunity out in the field, and he, you know, commits to that. And I thought that justified that setup. But I definitely would have liked to have seen Ginger Ale, you know, sort of step up more than just, hey, I'm throwing my hat in the ring for this, you know, vacant position. I would want to see her, you know, actively out in the field. But I think it worked well to see Merlin, you know, it was a crucial point for him as a character.
Right. I guess if Whiskey hadn't turned out to be a turncoat, she would have flown out there with him.
Yes.
And would have gotten her chance. Okay.
Let's talk about Poppy's people. Obviously, we've talked about Julianne Moore as Poppy. We have Edward Holcroft as Charlie, the turned agent. I'm calling him a Poppy's person.
Yes, that's fair.
I guess
that's fair.
Is,
he's in Poppyland, and
he's in Poppyland.
Poppy puppet.
We have an actual Poppy, Poppy Delevingne, and Keith Allen as Charles, and Tom Benedict Knight as Angel Baby.
Oh.
Those are there are a lot of Poppy people.
There are a lot of Poppy people.
Other than that, most of them end up blown up.
The rest are all red shirts.
The rest are red shirts.
So if we're going to talk about,
they are literally red shirts.
So if we're going to talk about Poppy people, and we're going to talk about Poppy, you know, the Clara character. So I think you mentioned as one of your points the planting of the tracker scene, and how that made everybody feel.
Go ahead.
How that made everyone
how
that made everyone feel in the audience of did it go too far? Because I think that's one of those. Am I feeling comfortable watching this with this audience? I'm glad I didn't bring my daughter to this movie. So it's interesting.
I was worried. I did not this time. I thought, I wonder if Steve will make that mistake this year.
No. I did not.
I have some respect for him taking flack from the interesting intercourse scene or idea from the first movie, and is like, you thought that was weird. Let's do this.
Hold my beer.
Yeah, he just went for it. Yeah. It was so over the top. I mean, I immediately went, nope, this is it, and okay, I'm over. I'm good with it. again, I mean, this movie weirdly had me in its clutches.
Yeah, I don't know. It was I kind of was on the fence with it. It's one of those moments where I'm like, well, I guess it's, they needed to find a scene to get the in the butt line like they did in the last film. They're like, well, let's up the stakes and make him do this. And I don't know. I thought it was fine. It served its purpose. To me, it just felt like they were. It felt very written for me. It's like,
no, I agree. And there's something misogynistic in that.
Yeah,
I think, at risk of being too much of a PC patrol. But yeah, it felt like we have to up the ante for that scene. And the whole musical festival had what's his name? Not Billy Madison. What's his name? Adam Sandler feel of like, hey, I kind of want to go to a music festival.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That, right,
so let's just write in a scene for that kind of thing. Cause I mean, that was a long way to go for about 30 seconds of important plot development. It seemed like.
Yeah, and it felt like this is kind of how Matt Vaughn does these scenes, where he's gonna lay it all on the table for you. And I feel like there are times where in scenes like this where I would appreciate the James Bond, as misogynistic as it might have been, at least the camera kind of like drifted away and as he was
right. Look out the
into
window
bed with the girl, and we would go look at the beautiful landscape that they're in. In this, it's like, wow, not only are we watching his hand go down under her underwear, but then we're zooming into her underwear and pretty much going on inside.
Well, again, Matthew Vaughn overfilms everything. Pete already said that. There was probably a shot where he went out the window, but instead he was also like, we got to get a camera in there. Sorry. That might not be good.
It's it's not, and in fact the whole sequence I find really I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm a dad. I found it horribly offensive because we're taking advantage in film of this woman specifically and exclusively because she is a woman. You cannot have this scene if it is a man. If it's a different thing. And I found it ridiculously offensive and totally narratively useless. It was stupid. It was a stupid choice, and it was offensive to the film and the story they were trying to tell. And again, listening to Edgerton try to talk about this, you can tell he says that there is awkwardness in having to stand up and defend it. It is a stupid and offensive thing, and I didn't find it useful or funny, and thought it was really ill-advised. I
would have been fine. I wouldn't have noticed if they had just put a tracker in her vape
nose
or something,
back,
anywhere,
nose,
anything.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
This is a film,
it's a good point.
What? Here's a thing that makes it gender neutral. I mean, even if they put it in her butt, everybody has a butt, right? I mean, you could even do that. Find a way to make a butt joke. I still have sodomy gags that haven't landed from the first movie around here. Go ahead and let's have all the butt jokes.
Well, yeah, but then you're just lifting
this
from Austin
specific.
Powers, where you're planting something in Fat Bastard's butt, so...
This was, and see, Fat Bastard, that's funny. This was not funny, and
agree.
it was really ridiculously sexist, a sexist choice, and ill-advised, and totally tone deaf.
It's one of those things that I have a feeling that when I see it again, it will not. In the way that you said that when you were back in your car and you were having trouble remembering what you heard, there is or what you saw, there is a chance that a lot of this stuff or some of my love for it might wash off. Kind of like an Avatar situation where when I was in the situation, I was like, wow. And then it comes on
Unobtainium, that's brilliant.
Can't have it, Tim. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Well, I don't want to, as you say, PC out too much. So please, somebody move me on. Do we have anything else to say about?
But you made really good points about the fact that it is so bankrupt as far as a necessary plot device. He just wanted to up the ante, and it's at the expense, and it's a good point.
So,
well, thank you, Thomas.
So to move it along, Pete, I think.
Hey, not right now. Not right now.
Doing a good job. Everybody's doing a good job. You guys are doing a good job.
Pete and I are having a nice little conversation. Hey, Pete, how's your beard doing? Okay, cut that out. Here we go.
I think the other role and cast and character that we need to talk about is Bruce Greenwood as the President of the United States. Because I think whenever...
I want to hear you.
Because I think whenever a movie's going to cast the president of the United States, you can go one of two ways. You either cast, to play toward whoever's currently in office, or you go with sort of your just sort of like generic presidential type. And so in the previous one, in first Kingsman, it was clear that they were, President Obama was there. That's who the president was. With this one, I struggle with identifying if this is, murky. Yes, it's really murky. And I'm trying to place whether this is supposed to be a Trump-esque president or just a presidential type. And there's some type of message they're trying to make, about the whole war on drugs and politics and all of that piece. And so it was really challenging for me to parse this out, trying to figure out what they were trying to say and what type of president this was, if they were commenting on our current president or not. And I'm not sure because it wasn't really clear to me.
It was really murky. I mean, giant red tie, sort of an off the cuff, here's what I sort of think kind of thing. And then also the really jarring, I've never seen it, I don't think, in a movie before, where the only news reports that you're seeing is Fox News. Like they're always in there, but it's always them and then CNN and stuff like that for Fox News. And it's not a parody of Fox News. Fox News is very just, we are on the record. I wasn't sure about the politics of this movie. I don't really understand it.
I don't know. I walked out feeling like, especially as they wrap that up. First of all, you have this president who makes the absolutely criminal decision to kill hundreds of millions of people and put them in these giant mass leaky jail cells stacked on one another. That's fine. That's a whole
dumb way to do that.
That was really stupid.
You know what you don't need to keep in a cage? People that can't move. Such a weird, yeah.
So, but the final sequence has a number of unsubtle symbols and bits of script that I felt like were quite opinionated. That the chief of staff Fox stands out and says, this president has broken the law and was willing to sentence hundreds of millions of people to death, and I stand by in honor as I preside over his impeachment. And the Fox News banner is "President Impeached." Cut to close-up of the president's face looking out the window, and he turns around, and handcuffs. We have a close-up of him in handcuffs as he is escorted away. That is an incredibly opinionated way to end this film and the presentation of the president. I felt like it was a deeply clear statement.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting the way that they that the storytellers chose to kind of depict that, and really, it's an interesting, with this whole the Poppy's motivation and everything, and this battle that she's having with everybody as far as the drugs go. I mean, it's quite a variety of drugs, everything from smoking pot to heroin. It's a very broad range, and it's interesting to see kind of what I don't know what the filmmakers are saying as far as that goes, but they definitely felt like they were certainly saying something about the president of the United States and kind of the opinion of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the opinion of drug use, the fact that our central character, that really the message of the drug use is not that drugs are bad. It's that drug use is a much more complicated problem. We've just given the rash to the chief of staff, this trusted inner circle, and the president turned around and completely betrayed her too. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's again, a very opinionated and I thought interesting statement. And I walked out of this. I came back and I was talking to my wife and I said, I feel like this may be the first in the next wave. Because you remember when Iraq and there was a series of films that portrayed the president in a certain light. And in this case, the president was, a number of films about sort of bumbling president and clumsy and, go back even further and Chevy Chase and the Gerald Ford bit was kind of, we had a number of films that involved presidents that sort of fit the office that they, that they are lampooned for holding. And in this case, I wonder if we're seeing now the first of the films about a president that is portrayed as outright criminal, the impeachment stories. And movies that play in that ground. I'm interested to see kind of how films begin to reflect culturally what we're experiencing.
That's
I will say part of the story issue I also had, just sidestepping a little from that point, Pete, but just involving the president of the United States, was that he clearly was planning on just dismissing everything that Poppy was doing. And I was kind of curious to see what was going to happen with Poppy when her plan kind of fell apart. And everybody just died, and the president let everybody die. Like, I was kind of curious, where that end game was going to take us, and of course we never went there. But it was like I felt like Poppy wasn't smart enough in some capacities, and there were elements that I think could have had a little better work on it.
Let's talk about Elton John then.
I'm kind of with Tommy on Elton John. I was like, oh, this is just absurd. But then he does that flying kick across the stage. I'm like, okay, that was pretty cool.
It was too much at one point. It was like, no one is finding this as funny as Matthew Vaughn is.
Yeah.
It's too much. And then they sort of brought it back. I know. It was fun. I think he used him too much. I would have liked a little bit more restraint as far as that's concerned. But even when he pops in and says Elton John friend to save him from one of the robot dogs, I mean, it was when he showed up and his face was in the middle, I was like, Matthew Vaughn, enough. And then when it said Elton John friend, I was like, oh, right. Matthew, you've done it again.
I actually thought I got to the point not where I was actually bought into the use of Elton John. I'm already pretty bearish on this movie, but the best part for me was when he turned around and said, I got to go save the world. If I save the world, can I get tickets to your show?
Oh, you're right.
And he said, if you save the world, I'll give you a backstage pass.
Wink. Yes, yeah, that was funny.
Let's go back to, I'm going to save the world here. I kind of was hoping for maybe a little more than even a backstage pass. Taron Egerton could get a backstage pass. And he sang an Elton John song in another movie.
Oh yeah.
I was nonplussed by Elton John.
Oh, it was fun. Taking everything to 11 and exaggerating. I mean, it's an exaggerated universe. And to me, it just fit with his persona. And then, just little gags like where he's singing, Saturday night's all right, Friday, but he's changed it to Wednesday. And the guy's like, well, isn't it Saturday night? He's like, well, what day is it? He's like, it's Wednesday. He's like, yes. To me, clever. It made me laugh out loud. I had so much fun with that. And you're laughing. Come on.
I like the toss away explanation of how
it's just so much fun. How do you not have fun with this movie? You guys are just taking it way too seriously.
I'm dead inside. I'm dead inside.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
It's a shame you missed out on having so much fun.
I liked the toss. I like the toss away explanation of how this even happened is, with all of those celebrities disappearing from the first movie that we didn't think anyone would notice.
To me, again, brilliant connection back to the first film. That's what a good sequel does. Leverage what you've done in the first and exploit it for the second and do it in a smart way.
And it really is fairly lavish with its respect to the first one. Like there's so many callbacks and so many sort of followed things. I kind of like that because the first one, I guess we're not talking about money yet, but I mean, the first one wasn't a huge hit, was it?
I'll tell you soon.
Fair enough. Okay. I was surprised that this one got a second one, I guess.
We got to jump into effects a little bit. It looks like predominantly 3 effects houses took this film: Senate VFX, Milk VFX, and Framestore. Framestore in particular was behind the notable taxi sequence in the beginning and that crazy drift.
Oh my gosh, so much fun.
That was great.
I have to admit, I was in that drift. I wanted to be in that drift. That was awesome. And the cable car spinny sequence. Andy, I know you loved that.
It's not the spinny sequence. The fact that these bad guys have designed their cable car to basically turn into an amusement park ride, which was complete and utter nonsense. That irritated me to no end. But the thing that really drives me nuts with cable car scenes in movies is when there's an accident and the wires get cut. Inevitably, it's going to happen. That it doesn't slip off of the cable. It just somehow the cable miraculously turns it into a swing and it holds it on and it swings the car down. It's like that would never happen in the real world.
That's a good
Why
point.
does
I didn't think
everybody
about
have
that.
this idea that that's what happens when cables break in a cable car? They don't swing down. It would slip
For
right
the
off
same reason
cable.
that nearly every action movie has somebody crawling through ductwork that would never hold a person up in it. It is just a movie convention that everyone has accepted.
I buy people climbing through ductwork
Because
That
they
is
did
something
it in
that
Die Hard,
seems-
damn it.
Because they did it in Die Hard. It just seems more logical. This is like there's not even an attempt of logic with
It's
this.
the Kingsman. What are you talking
That's-
about? Yeah, come on. That logic goes out the window in most things. Come on.
Write
That
it off all you
sequence,
want.
that sequence for me is another, I'm sorry to keep repeating the same narrative, but is another example of I didn't care for almost any of that sequence. The spinning around, the falling through I didn't care for any of it. And then there's a retirement community at the bottom of the mountain. And I was like, Matthew Vaughn, you did it again. Like I'm back in because that was so funny of just these old people being like, no, as this thing plummets down the mountain of them. So that saved it for me. But no, that seemed like a trailer ready sequence. Like we just need something big and splashy. None of that really worked except for the
Tom, I am consistently surprised by your sense of humor. I've known you for 20 years, and this, I cannot believe.
I thought that was
you
really
are
funny.
So
No?
bought into that. Oh my God. It's just unpredictable. Steve has proven to me exactly which side of his bread is buttered.
Old people talking about bowel movements is always funny.
It's always funny. I get that. But I am surprised, Tom. Surprised.
How do you know I'm Tom? You know? What if I turned out to be Tommy Ugly? There is one thing though to go real quick back about the script is that whole sequence did really bother me because we went up to the mountain, got the thing, came down and destroyed it. That entire sequence could be lifted out of the film and everything would be fine. That's kind of unforgivable in a 2.5 hour movie. So I really felt like when that broke and they so telegraphed that it was going to break. Yeah. He's just holding it like a weirdo the entire time. That is one of the most exhausting feelings for me to feel in a movie. It's like, oh,
It was
really?
the setup that Whiskey is like a, suspect character because it's like he's holding it and Whiskey's like, oh, can I see that? And just as he's about to hand it to him, it's like, oh, no, he's like, can take it back because there's something going outside. I thought, okay. Yeah, there was a lot of mechanics behind trying to get this setup of like Whiskey's not a reliable character.
That felt pretty belabored and a little unfortunate to me, but filled with some really fun action for me.
We have this huge factory at the top of the mountain where they've decided to manufacture the antidote, and then they blow it up. It's like you haven't even emptied it. But she still has tons apparently that these little drones fly all over the world. It's that whole sequence is just like cut it out of the movie. It doesn't take you anywhere.
Yep. Now that I'm remembering, I remember feeling pretty bad about that.
There you go. That's the spirit I'm trying to engender here.
Less joy.
I want you to feel bad. Let's see. Music, Henry Jackman and Matthew Margeson. We've already talked about the use of the hunky John Denver in this movie. How do you feel about the rest of the music?
Did its job. It was pretty deafening. There's no subtlety that you are sad now. You are excited now. It's one of those movies.
As Andy said, they brought the themes back when Harry's in the bar and he's closing off the door, manners make man. We've got that theme back there, which to me was very exciting.
For a movie, as Steve has been saying, 211, the film or the music did its job very much of telling us exactly how we were supposed to feel. And if we were questioning how we were supposed to feel, we couldn't because there was no room in our heads for anything but the sound of the music. It literally drowned out my thoughts.
Well, I have to tell you guys, I feel good that I got through all 5 major points in my opus of feeling about this movie. In terms of closing thoughts as we go around, I feel like it was a great. It was leverages a great origin story in Kingsman 1 very, very poorly, and I found myself really disappointed in what I wanted, what I thought it could have been. I clearly was not I was not the right Pete in my head when I saw this movie. I get that, but it did not land for me. Andy?
Yeah, I'm in the same place. I ended up just feeling like it didn't do enough for me. I was disappointed. It didn't use the elements that it was bringing to the table in ways that I was excited about. Like the Statesmen, I thought, oh, what a great idea, bring the Statesmen into it. It all fell flat for me. The destruction of the Kingsman, that fell flat for me. There were elements that I did like the some of these characters and the relationships, but on the whole, I ended up being disappointed. And the fact that they brought Harry back, I think, was the biggest disappointment of them all.
Tommy?
I'm going to be really interested in seeing this movie again. I remember when I saw the first one, as soon as I got out of the theater, I immediately wanted to see the church scene again. Kind of like with the Captain America, I don't remember what it's called. I immediately wanted to see the airport fight again. Mm-hmm. So it had this like really like dig in kind of moment. I'm not sure what that moment would be for this. So while I really enjoyed it and I had a lot of fun and I thought it was pretty smart, I'll be interested to see if it holds up.
Okay, Steve.
All right. So this is Kingsman and the Golden Circle, which is clearly very upfront the logo of the crime syndicate. But if you pay attention to the end of the film, we have some other golden circles that happen, which are the wedding rings of Eggsy and Tilda when they get married, which I think also is mirrored in the union of the Statesmen and the Kingsmen. We have other unions joined by golden circles there. So that title, I think, applies across several layers in this film. And it is something that I am looking forward to watching again. And just as you watch John Wick 1 and 2 back to back, I am looking forward to watching both Kingsman movies back to back.
Andy, how's it doing in the box office?
Tommy had asked the information. The first one, it did well for itself. It actually made back 4 times its budget.
Oh wow! Okay,
it cost about $95 million, and then it ended up making total about $422 million. So it did really handsomely at the box office. This one. It's off to, I think, a slightly weaker start than they were hoping. This one, they gave it an extra $10 million, so it $104 million was the budget. Right now, as it stands, they're thinking that it's not going to quite hit $40 million over the course of this opening weekend. I think that still it's going to put it at number 1 in the box office. I just don't know how long it's going to hold that spot. But they already have Kingsman 3 slated for production. So
really,
so I'm thinking that they're all feeling like this one's going to do well for them.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah. International box office can contribute quite a bit to that.
The international box office was almost doubled domestic for the first one.
I think it's probably time. This is going to be brutal, you guys. I can already feel it. It's time for us to rank it.
Kingsmen, back again to shield from all that evil brings when some blue rashes and a lasso leaves a sting. Men of the film board, it is time we start to take to heart this work of art and now impart its ranking on Flick Chart.
See, now that's a song of a guy who liked a movie.
Yes.
I just came up with that off the top of my head.
Genius.
Head over to flickchart.com/TNR Film Board and join us for our own little film ranking Thunderdome. Andy, where do we start?
Kicking it off, we have Kingsman, The Golden Circle, or The Finest Hours.
I like this movie, just like she did.
Kingsman.
I'm definitely Finest Hours.
No.
The Finest Hours.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah. I've actually watched that movie again since we talked about it. And it's
really?
It's better than you think.
No, it's not.
I asked the Finest Hours, and the Finest Hours doesn't even like the Finest Hours.
Andy?
I'm kind of split on this one. I feel like I'm going to lean toward Kingsman, though. Sorry, Pete.
All right.
Kingsman, The Golden Circle, or Prisoners?
Oh, Prisoners.
110%.
Okay, Prisoners, yes.
Prisoners.
Kingsman, The Golden Circle, or Captain America, The Winter Soldier?
Winter Soldier.
Is that the one with the...
No, that's Civil War.
No,
this
that was
the
Civil
Robert
War.
Redford one?
Right. Kingsman, for me, even though I'm throwing my vote in a well.
Kingsman, The Golden Circle, or Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets?
Ugh, Kingsman.
Yes.
I am going to say Valerian.
What?
I ended up quite liking that movie.
Oh, you did?
Surprised.
Oh, that's right. I listened to the podcast. That's right.
It was
I wasn't
fun, and I think the big market scene is good, but overall, I had a much more entertaining time with Kingsman Golden Circle.
The big difference between Kingsman and Valerian is in Kingsman, people had chemistry, and the film cared about its characters.
Wow. I thought that was going to be a joke. That was not funny.
No, that was not.
That was like
very biting. Yeah.
We've got serious Tommy on board.
Spank. All right, who's going to do it, Pete? Why don't you and Tommy?
All right, Tommy. Do you remember how this works?
Just shout out words. Just shout words at him.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Paper.
Rock.
There we go. Yeah, Tommy for the win.
Way to go,
man.
See, my thinking is everyone always thinks the other person's going to go with scissors. Oh, why did I tell you? Why did I tell you? That's why I've never lost. Oh, wait, I lost 19,000 Rochambeaus. Okay, go ahead.
All right, next up, Kingsman, The Golden Circle, or Snowden. I will go with Snowden.
Kingsman. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I abstain. I haven't seen Snowden.
I'm gonna go with Snowden.
Okay. I can live with that.
All right, next up, Kingsman, The Golden Circle, or The Dark Tower.
Kingsman.
I'm going to say The Dark Tower.
I have to abstain since I was not part of that.
Oh, I have to abstain too.
Oh, look at that.
Snap. Oh, and I've given up my keys for success. Now I have to outthink you. Okay.
That's right.
Can we have Foster vote for you
We'll
in place?
I haven't seen him for weeks. All right, go ahead.
All right, ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
Scissors.
Scissors.
Paper. Oh! The old double scissors gambit. You got me again, Nelson.
All right, well, that lands Kingsman, The Golden Circle at 27 on our chart. 27 out of 62.
Well, that's way too high.
It is pretty high. I'm disappointed in myself with my finest hours.
Where's the original Kingsman at?
Yeah, you should sleep on that.
First one is at number 5.
That's fine.
Oh, okay.
Oh, God. Okay. Letterboxd. Over at letterboxd.com/the next reel, we do it out of 5 stars. And you got to know if it's a heart or a no heart, a like or no like over on Letterboxd. Steve, why don't you kick us off?
It's got a big old heart, and I'm going to give it 4 stars.
Tommy?
I will give it 4 and a heart.
4
Yes,
stars.
it was so much fun. It makes me sad that your life is so, that you can't have joy like this. That Tommy and I have joy.
This was no. There were things in this movie that worked for me that I feel like were fun, and I didn't talk enough about the quiet moments that I liked, and I have kind of a list of them. I won't talk about them now, but there were moments that I really enjoyed, and so this was probably a 2-star movie. Walking out of it for me, and I have gotten myself so mad over the last hour and a few minutes that it's now a 1.5.
What?
With
hold on.
Andy can have
quibbles with the movie and give it 5 stars, and this you have a few issues and it's 1. What?
Yeah.
And it went down during the podcast.
Over the course. You guys actually did not. You guys made such a terrible case for this movie that it made it worse for me. Well done, geniuses.
Wow. Well, I'm at a 2.5. I felt like it was pretty middling, and so I feel like that's fair, but I'm not giving it a like. So I'm 2.5 with no like. So I don't know. What did we decide we were going to do?
That's
that averages to a 3.
Well, that's pretty easy. I mean, it averages to a 3.
I'm happy with that.
So I guess that still means a like.
Yeah.
So we all love the movie. Great.
Oh, thanks, statistics.
Take that and stick it into your, orifice with membranes.
Oh, Steve. Why do you have to go to the dark places?
That and Pete yelling, "Everybody has butts," is my 2 favorite parts of this podcast. We're really getting classy here, gents. We are so much more statesmen than Kingsman.
Sad but true.
Okay. Well, Andy, can you fill us in? Where do we go from here?
Well, our next film board, we're going to be going back to the future of Blade Runner with Blade Runner 2049. It'll be an interesting one to revisit that film from 1982. It's an interesting sequel to make. So we'll be chatting about that.
And that's with our old friend Dennis Villeneuve,
Yes,
right?
Denis
Villeneuve.
Yeah.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve. So, and then on our main show, we are still in the middle of our Star Trek series. We've made it over the hump. We are we've made it over the hump of the whole series, and we've made it over the hump of the Next Generation team. We're going to be talking about Insurrection.
Yep.
With this next one.
Well, this is, as always, when we're split decisions on these movies, they're much more fun conversations. Thank you, gents. Steve, it's still great to talk to you.
It is always a pleasure to be here discussing movies with you guys.
And Tommy Handsome.
A real pleasure, ain't it?
Say that kind of film, bro. And Andy Nelson.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to The Film Board. You can find and follow us over on Facebook and Twitter, and we'd love it if you would help us by joining up as a patron on patreon.com/thenextreel. Consider giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or even better, tell the movie lovers you know that they should come hang out with us on The Next Reel, because when our movie ends,
the conversation begins.
You guys had that planned. That was
Andy.
wonderful.
I wasn't. I almost wasn't even prepared for that. I'm glad I knew my line.
Me too.
I wish that Pete would have said, when the movie ends, and Andy goes, scissors.
All right, I'm stopping the recording. Tommy, get it all out of your system.
Hey, I'm good. I feel good about this. Woo! Oh, I just woke up, Foster. Oh, sorry, buddy.
That's where he's been. Why is he so skinny?
I know.